come after us and we'll hang bodies up at noon in town as a warning, as a demonstration of who is in charge here.
December 16, 2009, the leader of the Beltrán Leyva cartel, Arturo Beltrán Leyva, was executed by Melquisedec Angulo Cordova. Seeking revenge, the cartel not only made sure he paid for Leyva's execution, but they would go as far as to involve his family in the most brutal way possible. Here are the Mexican cartel's most brutal revenge methods.
¿Tu nombre?
Eric Gámez García. Soy originario de Cubiri de la Loma.
2012, a video, 5 minutes of sheer horror, found its way onto the screens of the unsuspecting public. Now this video's a level of gruesome too extreme to describe, but it proved the lengths El Chapo was willing to go to for revenge. June 17, 2011, Felix Gámez García was arrested for drug charges in the U.S. before posting bail for $20,000. You see, Garcia and his uncle Barnabas Gámez Castro were reportedly involved with the Sinaloa Cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations. Their involvement in the cartel's activities would include drug transportation and other logistical support for the cartel's operations. However, they weren't well paid. Garcia and Castro got paid around 300 pesos, which was equivalent to $21 at the time. So, along the line, they get tempted to take some more money for themselves, most especially when Garcia got arrested. It didn't take long before Garcia and his uncle were captured to explain how they came about the money for Garcia's bail. Additionally, the cartel also suspected that Garcia might have given information to the police during his detention. 2012, a video was released after Garcia and Castro were captured. Here we can see him sitting shirtless against a wall. Some men went on to interrogate him briefly, forcing him to confess their roles in the cartel and their betrayals by stealing from the organization. After the interrogation, the masked men used a chainsaw to decapitate Felix Gámez García. As for Barnabas Gámez Castro, he was killed with a knife, which was a lot slower and equally as gruesome. April 2, 2007, another video surfaced on YouTube. The video was later taken down for violating the terms, but it would open with a chilling call to arms, saying, "Do something for your country, kill a Zeta," making it seem like taking out the Zetas was a service to the nation. The Zetas, a name that struck fear into the hearts of many, were the target of this sinister message because of the long war between them and the Sinaloa cartel. As the footage rolled on, a man tied to a chair and wearing only underwear had a Z drawn on his chest. Above it was written, "Welcome, kill women and children, continue Ostian." This left viewers bewildered, as everyone wondered who or what Ostian was. It was speculated to be a mysterious figure, or perhaps a code name. Etched on his leg was the name Lascano, which referred to the notorious leader of the Zetas, Heriberto Lascano. Meanwhile, an unseen interrogator's voice could then be heard, asking if the captured man was involved in the Acapulco killings. The man, terrified, denied it at first, but later confessed after being tortured. Then the unthinkable happened. The video captured the gruesome act of not with knives, but with a chainsaw. Afterwards, a final message written in blood red sent a clear threat. "Lascano, you're next." The video was uploaded by a user named Mata Zetaregio on YouTube. This incident was part of a broader war that saw countless acts of violence and brutality. The use of chainsaws became really popular under the leadership of El Chapo. As further proof of this, Valdez Rios, also known as Memín, a former Special Forces soldier who began working for El Chapo as a sicario, made several confessions testifying to the brutality of his boss and how he was notorious for offing people's heads with chainsaws. January 2015, rare footage of El Chapo emerges, showing him executing a member of a rival cartel. In the video, El Chapo can be seen with his favorite baseball cap encircling the helpless man who was tied to a pole. Valdez Rios testified that after these sorts of interrogations, El Chapo would rev up a chainsaw and get to work on his victims. The treatment was specially reserved for rival cartels who dared to cross the path of the Sinaloa cartel. It is reported that the bodies of those beheaded with chainsaws also showed up randomly in the Sinaloa region. The cartel doesn't care to hide these gory acts. Instead, they proudly place these decapitations bodies in public spaces to ensure that the message gets sent out to those who think they can mess with the organization. April 2024, the police discovered an execution site on a busy road in Puebla, Mexico. The scene had 7 bodies, of which 5 were dismembered with a chainsaw. This scene has become all too familiar for those who live in areas with high cartel activity. You see, chainsaws make it really messy and gory, which is the exact result these cartels want. It's not about just revenge, it's about doing it in the most horrific way possible. Now, if you thought that was pretty brutal, wait until you hear the next one. 1978, Héctor Luis Palma Salazar, better known as El Guero Palma, a prominent figure in the Sinaloa cartel, was imprisoned in the U.S. Now, this was an opportunity for his rivals to exert the cruelest revenge on him. Héctor Palma, a native of Sinaloa, Mexico, earned his nickname El Guero due to his fair complexion and reddish hair. He began his criminal career in the 1970s, initially working for the Guadalajara cartel, where he quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a trusted lieutenant. His expertise lay in the cultivation and transportation of marijuana, and later, he expanded it to include cocaine. However, a shocking betrayal came from El Guero's wife, Guadalupe Leia Serrano, the person he trusted the most. Now, she didn't act alone. Her accomplice was Venezuelan drug dealer Rafael Enrique Clavel. While El Guero was in prison, Leia was accustomed to the lavish lifestyle and sought to continue living lavishly. This desire made her fall for the seductions of Clavel. However, in 1984, when Palma was serving his sentence for drug-related charges, Clavel took Leia and her 2 children away from Mexico. Little did she know that it was all a trap. After forcing her to withdraw $7 million from her husband's account, Clavel decided he didn't need her anymore. He was in alliance with the Tijuana cartel at this time, and they wanted to hurt El Guero in every possible way. They knew that the best way to do it was to go after his family, but to ensure the pain was maximized, they would take it a step further. Clavel brutally beheaded Leia and preserved her head in a container filled with ice. The gruesome package was then mailed to the prison cell of the unsuspecting El Guero Palma. Staring at his beloved wife's head must have been an unimaginable horror. But that's not all. This is just the beginning. Clavel had El Guero's son and daughter with him. They were only 7 and 5 years old. But this is a cartel that shows no mercy to anyone. The sicarios drove the children to a bridge known as Puente de la Concordia, which is close to the border of Colombia. Here, Clavel threw the 2 kids off the bridge to their deaths. This was considered a payback for El Guero Palma invading the Tijuana cartel's territory, and a response to the ongoing turf war between rival cartels. And as if this wasn't enough, the cartel once again targeted a top member of the Mexican police force. October 5th, 2021, the Tijuana cartel sends a dreadful message to the new Tijuana police chief. It was a head inside a plastic bag with a note written in Spanish. Translated, it read, "Miss Governor, we think that the new government brings honest people and not blessed extortionists in collusion with the Sinaloa cartel, like Rafael Vasquez Hernandez, kidnapper. Under the orders of the Sinaloa cartel in Tijuana, blood will flow because of that kidnapper." Now, the head was from an unknown person, but it was speculated that it was most likely from a member of the Sinaloa cartel. And that's because the message to the police chief was a stern warning against the police helping the Sinaloa cartel in this ongoing war between 2 criminal organizations. The new police chief, Rafael Vasquez, had served in the police force for 19 years before taking that position, and as a result, he was used to getting threats from the cartel. Because it didn't really matter if a police officer was corrupt or not, all officers are prime targets for these organizations. And when it comes to attaching notes to severed heads, there's another Mexican cartel that seems to favor this method. September 2006, a similar event happens when about 20 armed men storm a popular nightclub in the Mexican state of Michoacan. Their mission wasn't to attack the patrons, but to send a message. Oh, that message was delivered with 5 heads dumped at the center of the dance floor. Along with the heads was a note stating that this was divine justice carried out on behalf of the family. The note further stated that the family doesn't kill for money. It doesn't kill women or innocent people. Those who die are those who must die. Everyone should know that this is divine justice. Authorities believe this act was carried out by the deadly Zetas cartel, a cartel made up of elite military personnel that had gone rogue.
Come after us and we'll hang bodies up at noon in town as a warning, as a demonstration of who is in charge here.
December 16, 2009, Mexican Navy Special Forces tracked the leader of the Beltrán Leyva cartel, Arturo Beltrán Leyva, to a luxury apartment complex in Cuernavaca. One of the soldiers at the scene was Melquisedec Angulo Cordova, which would later pay dearly with his family for this attack on the BLO. For many years, Arturo Leyva was wanted by the Mexican government, but this is a cartel boss no one really wanted to mess with, not even the Mexican army. He and his brothers aligned themselves with the Sinaloa cartel, led by El Chapo, and under Chapo's guidance, Arturo's gang grew in power, becoming integral to the cartel's operations. As Dom Toretto would say, family is the most important thing. The cartel understood this all too well, and going after the families of enemies to exert revenge was one of the most heartless strategies they had. Arturo, just like El Chapo, was notorious for going after the families of their foes, and this ruthless strategy will play out in a significant way later on. 2008, a betrayal shatters the alliance. Arturo's brother, Alfredo, was arrested, and the Beltrán Leyva brothers blamed El Chapo. Fueled by vengeance, Arturo broke away from the Sinaloa cartel, forming his own organization, the Beltrán Leyva cartel. Declaring himself as El Jefe de Jefes, meaning the boss of bosses, Arturo would unleash a reign of terror, targeting former allies and high-ranking officials alike. Arturo's cartel quickly became one of the most feared in Mexico. They controlled the drug trafficking routes into the U.S., engaged in money laundering, gun running, and even committed acts of extreme violence. Arturo's ruthlessness earned him the nickname La Muerte, meaning death. December 16, 2009, the Mexican government, with assistance from the U.S., launched an operation to capture him. As special forces closed in, a fierce gunfight erupted. Arturo, armed and defiant, fought back with everything he had. The battle was intense, with bullets flying and grenades exploding. Despite his efforts, Arturo was outnumbered and outgunned. In the end, he died from several gunshot wounds. And while it seemed to be the end, let's not forget this was a deadly cartel that loved to strike back. December 21st, 2009, Melquisedec Angulo Cordova, one of the soldiers at the scene, was buried with full military honors. His burial drew a lot of media attention. His family stood by, mourning his death, but little did they know they were being watched. And worse, a tragedy was about to befall him. That night, the cartel struck. Gunmen stormed Melquisedec's family home, brutally murdering his mother, brother, sister, and aunt.
This is for the record. Nita and 4 of my grandchildren are burnt and shot up.
November 4th, 2019. This revenge method of targeting families of foes was taken a notch higher. On this fateful day, 3 SUVs set out from the isolated La Mora community in Sonora, Mexico. The vehicles carried members of the LeBaron, Langford, and Miller families, all part of a close-knit group of American-Mexican Mormons. They were on their way to a wedding, a joyous occasion that would soon be overshadowed by unimaginable horror. Their tranquility was shattered by the sound of gunfire, bullets raining down on the first SUV, driven by Ronita Miller LeBaron. The vehicle was hit multiple times, causing it to burst into flames. Inside the burning SUV, Ronita and her 4 children were trapped. Ronita's maternal instincts took over. She tried desperately to shield her children from the flames, but the fire was too intense. The vehicle became a fiery tomb, and their lives were tragically cut short. The gunmen, believed to be members of the La Linea cartel, then turned their attention to the other 2 SUVs. Donna Langford, driving in the second vehicle, was also ambushed. She and her 2 sons were killed in a hail of bullets. Donna's other children, who survived the attack, later recounted the terror they felt as they hid in the bushes, listening to the gunfire and praying for it to stop. In the third SUV, Christina Langford Johnson made a split-second decision that would save her young's life. As bullets tore through the vehicle, she placed her daughter on the floor and stepped out with her hands raised, hoping to reason with the attackers. Her bravery cost her her life, but her daughter was found unharmed and still strapped in her car seat. The massacre left 9 people dead, 3 women and 6 children. The injured survivors managed to escape and seek help. That attack was in revenge against the LeBaron family, known for their activism against cartel violence. Think of family massacres extreme? Well, the worst is yet to come. 2010 marked a particularly violent chapter in Mexico's ongoing drug war, especially between El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel and the Juarez cartel. During this war, El Chapo unveiled his cruelest torture method, peeling the faces of those unfortunate to fall into his hands. January 2010, news outlets across Mexico broke a story that would leave the nation in shock. A mutilated body, dismembered into numerous pieces, had been discovered, but the true horror lay in the fate of the victim's face. It had been meticulously peeled, preserved, and stitched onto a soccer ball, a gruesome transformation that defied imagination. And that's because El Chapo's revenge was a meticulously planned crime. After capturing Hugo Hernandez, a man of considerable influence within the Juarez cartel, he subjected him to an unimaginable fate in his hidden lair, surrounded by his loyal and equally ruthless henchmen. With Hernandez bound and utterly helpless, El Chapo unveiled his instrument of choice, a menacing chainsaw. The whirring sound of the chainsaw echoed through the room. As cartel members restrain their captive, El Chapo, with a sadistic grin, brings that chainsaw closer to Hernandez's face. The chainsaw would tear through Hernandez's face, it from his head in the most brutal way. But the true terror was yet to unfold because El Chapo, with a surgeon's precision, carefully peeled the skin, preserving the facial features intact, and then proceeded to stretch and stitch it onto a soccer ball, creating a masterpiece straight out of Hellraiser. The soccer ball, now bearing Hernandez's frozen expression of terror, served as a chilling message not to mess with the cartel. El Chapo told his men to place that ball in a public place to ensure it would be easily discovered. When the police found the ball at the steps of City Hall the next day, it was accompanied by a taunting message wishing Hernandez a Happy New Year. A similar chilling incident sent shockwaves throughout Mexico again and the international community. Mexican authorities apprehended 3 individuals affiliated with the notorious Guerreros Unidos cartel, a division of the once powerful BLO. Now, this arrest was linked to the gruesome murder of Julio Cesar Mondragon, a student whose face was brutally flayed and his eyes gouged out, leaving only a haunting skull behind. The Guerreros Unidos is a name that really strikes fear into the hearts of many. Following the death of Arturo Beltrán Leyva in 2009, his former security and hit squad members would join forces to form the Guerreros Unidos, and ever since then they have left a trail of bloodshed across their path. September 26, 2014 marked the height of the cartel's notoriety with the Iguala kidnapping. This would be a turning point in the public's perception of this ruthless group. On this day, a brave group of students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teachers College embarked on a journey to protest against corruption and discrimination. Their target was a conference hosted by Maria de los Angeles Pineda Villa, the wife of Iguala Mayor Jose Luis Abarca Velázquez. These students, armed only with their voices, sought to challenge the government's biased hiring and funding practices, which they believed favored urban students. Tragically, their peaceful mission was violently interrupted. The police, acting as accomplices to the cartel, intercepted the students, leading to a shootout that claimed 6 lives. The surviving students were then forced into police vehicles and handed over to the Guerreros Unidos. This heinous act of collusion between law enforcement and organized crime sparked outrage and intensified the scrutiny of the cartel. It was during this operation that the cartel peeled off the face of Julio Cesar Mondragon. The aftermath of this incident is a grim reminder of the cartel's brutality. Of the 43 kidnapped students, only 2 bodies had been recovered, while the remaining 41 are presumed dead, likely victims of the Guerreros Unidos' merciless reign. The arrests of several cartel members, including the former mayor of Iguala and his wife, signify a very small victory in the ongoing battle against this vicious criminal organization. September 27, 2020. We get to know the cartel sicario known as Ghost Rider, but the reason he became popular is a story of extreme horror. Mexico's Alaguaye had become the epicenter of a bloody conflict, a battleground between 2 ruthless cartels, the Jalisco New Generation and the United Cartel, or Los Unidos. The CJNG, led by El Mencho, was a force of pure evil. They spread like a virus, leaving destruction and despair in their wake. Their goal was simple: absolute dominance. On the other side, we have Los Unidos, a coalition of smaller cartels, which stood as a formidable adversary, and among them was a man whose name alone sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened criminals: Ghost Rider. This guy was a psychopath, a creature of the night, enjoying gore and mayhem. His victims were not merely killed. They were subjected to fates that death itself would deem cruel. On one occasion, a father and a son fell into his grasp. The two were hacked to death with their bodies mutilated, and as if savoring the moment, Ghost Rider set the son's remains ablaze. Ghost Rider's appetite for terror was insatiable. He turned his gaze towards those who dared uphold justice. A police officer sworn to protect became his next victim. The officer was abducted, and his fate was a descent into hell. With surgical precision, Ghost Rider dismembered him, limb by limb, savoring the officer's agony. But what he didn't know was that he too was destined to become a victim of his own sinister craft. Oh, the CJNG, driven by vengeance, captured Ghost Rider later that month, and they sought to make him pay for his countless sins. On a secluded ranch, they would tie him up to face a gruesome fate. Ghost Rider, once a symbol of fear, now lay broken, his body bearing the marks of torture. But this was the beginning of his nightmare. First, they would flay his skin, exposing raw, quivering muscle. The cartel would want him alive to prolong the agony, so they injected him with adrenaline as to not pass out. Then they amputated his limbs. Despite the loss of blood and shock, Ghost Rider remained conscious. At this point, he must have been praying for death to come quickly, but the climax was yet to come. Dousing his exposed flesh with rubbing alcohol, they set him ablaze, transforming his face into a ball of fire. His captors intensified their torment after getting infuriated by his resilience. They doused his face even more with alcohol and set it on fire yet again. His body would convulse as flames licked his flesh. Unfortunately for him, some of the flames found their way to his crotch, consuming his genitals. At this point, his face began to melt, revealing the whites of his skull beneath it. What remained was unrecognizable, a charred remnant of a man, his features twisted by the flames. Unfortunately, this revenge didn't end the war between these two cartels.
Mi nombre es Carlos Enrique Sánchez Martínez, alias el Cholo, originario de Guadalajara, Jalisco. Encontré esta situación por ser contra del CJNG.
March 18, 2021, a chilling video surfaced capturing the once powerful El Cholo in a state of captivity. Surrounded by masked, armed men, El Cholo was about to have the worst day of his life. Now, Carlos Enrique Sanchez, or El Cholo, was once a trusted lieutenant of the ruthless CJNG cartel. His rise to power was marked by blood and fear. Alongside the merciless leader El Mencho, he too orchestrated countless executions, striking terror into the hearts of their enemies and wayward members alike. But he was an extremely ambitious man. He craved the power of a king, envisioning himself as an equal to El Mencho. In 2017, El Cholo made his move with another CJNG lieutenant by his side called Eric Valencia Salazar, better yet known as L85, and they would plot their escape from the CJNG. However, that was a huge mistake. Together they formed the Nueva Plaza Cartel, and their goal was clear. It was to challenge El Mencho, the very man they once served, and perhaps even snuff out his reign. But in the world of cartels, come on, such aspirations were equal to dancing with death. 2018 witnessed a descent into madness as the cartel's war transformed the streets of Guadalajara into rivers of blood. Disappearances became commonplace, and death loomed around every corner. El Cholo and his Nueva Plaza cartel struck a critical blow, assassinating Marcos Hernandez, the financial backbone of CJNG. Oh, that audacious act grabbed El Mencho's attention, and his wrath knew no bounds. He swore to make El Cholo's end as miserable as his betrayal. So the hunt for El Cholo began. It was the hunters who became the hunted. But get this, the hit squad sent by El Mencho was outmaneuvered and eliminated by the Nueva Plaza. A humiliating defeat for CJNG. And now, El Cholo's luck was running thin. March 18, 2021. His luck did run out. El Cholo was successfully captured in a raid by sicarios of the CJNG. With nowhere to run and no means to fight, El Cholo was forced to kneel before the cartel he once served. surrounded by heavily armed men, he delivered a somber message, his words dripping with regret. He confessed to conspiring with CJNG lieutenants LO2 and LO3, plotting to overthrow El Mencho. He admitted to unleashing chaos in Guadalajara, even implicating the police in his twisted scheme.
Me encontré en el Distrito Federal con Omar García Harfuch para que me brindara apoyo, ya que ambos somos.
His last message was, "If you still support me, tend to your families, lest you meet my fate." On the same day this video surfaced, a gruesome discovery was made in Jardín Hidalgo, a park near Tlaquepaques City Hall. A body, mutilated beyond recognition, lay in a clear plastic bag, accompanied by this chilling message: "The traitor, El Cholo." The autopsy revealed it was indeed El Cholo's body. It also showed that he was beaten mercilessly, with his toes severed, ribs shattered, and he probably endured agony beyond imagination. But there was more. His tongue was also forcibly extracted, and finally, he had 3 shots to the head, which ended his torment.
The alleged drug kingpin shot a man, then ordered his crew to bury him alive. The witness also claimed that El Chapo personally executed 2 people who were kidnapped back in 2006.
January 2019. The courtroom fell silent as Valdez Rios began to unravel the gruesome tales of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's reign of terror. Among all the crazy stuff he said, we found stories of victims that were buried alive by the cartel kingpin himself. Valdez Rios described a scene that haunts him to this day. He spoke of a rival cartel member who had the misfortune of falling into El Chapo's grasp. Now, this prisoner, already broken from unimaginable torture, had his skin covered in multiple burns and open wounds. But despite the obvious pain he was in, El Chapo wasn't satisfied. So, he ordered his men to keep the prisoner isolated, letting his wounds fester and his body decay. As the man's condition deteriorated, El Chapo lost patience. He then told his men to dig up a grave at a nearby cemetery, and once ready, El Chapo confronted his captive with a pistol in hand, with which he shot the cartel man. Although severely wounded, this man didn't die from the shot, and as a result of this, El Chapo goes a step further and buries him alive. El Chapo's vengeance wasn't just about taking lives, but about inflicting terror. The legacy of his fearsome reputation continues to linger in the memories of those who survived his reign.